Today we're going to look at equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are equal in value. That means they would occupy the same amount of something that was divided up. So if we had here a slab of something and we divided it into 4 parts and then only looked at 3 of them, so only had 3 of them or shaded 3 of them, then we'd have 3/4, three parts of something divided into 4 parts. Now that's going to be the same as something cut up into 8 parts and taking 6 of them. You can see that lines up, and that is exactly the same amount of stuff that we have, exactly the same amount of stuff that's shaded. Here we've got 1/4 that's left unshaded, and here we have 2/8 that are left unshaded. That means these two fractions are equivalent. Equivalent means they are the same amount, they equal the same thing. So 3/4 is equal to 6/8. So any fraction that has the same numerator, and remember the numerator is the number above this line, the name of the line is called the vinculum, and the denominator is the number that's below the vinculum. So the numerator and denominator. If the numerator and denominator are the same, if they are the same number, if they were both 6 or both 4 or both 8 or whatever, then the actual fraction is equal to 1. It's like saying, here we've got something we've cut up into 4 parts and we're going to have all 4 of them. Here we've got something cut up into 8 parts, we're going to have all 8 of them. So that's the whole thing, 1. So 3/3, that's 1. 7/7, and 1's something that's cut up into one thing is 1. So any number, say A can be in place of a number, so any number as a numerator and the denominator is equal to 1. The vinculum here, the line that separates the numerator and denominator, can also be represented as a divide sign. And in fact, you can see that the divide sign, which is 2 dots with a line in between the 2 dots, it looks a bit like a fraction with the dots being numbers. So the vinculum here can represent a divide symbol. So we know that 3 divided by 3 is 1. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 1 divided by 1 is 1. Any number divided by itself is 1. So that's why any fraction with the same numerator and denominator is equal to 1. Now we can produce equivalent fractions by either multiplying or dividing the numerator and denominator by the same value. We have to multiply or divide them by the same number. If we don't multiply them by the same number, then it's not equivalent. The reason for this is if we multiply by 5 over 5, that's the same as multiplying by 1. And if we multiply any number by 1, we're left with the same value. So here if we've got 2/7 and we multiply the top and the bottom by 5, so 2 times 5 and 7 times 5 for the denominator, then we have 2 times 5 is 10, 7 times 5 is 35, 10/35. And that's the same amount as 2/7. Here, if we've got 7/21, if we have 7/21 and divide the top, the numerator and the denominator both by 7, so 7 divided by 7 is 1 and 21 divided by 7 is 3. So 7/21 is equivalent to 1/3. It's the same amount, same value. So the simplest form of a fraction is found by dividing the numerator and denominator by their highest common factor, the HCF. And recall, the highest common factor is the largest number that will the largest whole number that will equally divide both of the numbers that we're looking at. So for, say, 12 and 18, the highest common factor, the biggest number that we can divide both 12 and 18 by is 6. So 12 is equal to 2 times 6. So if we were to take 12 divided by 6, we'd be left with 2. And 18 is the highest common factor as well, 6. So if we do 18 divided by 6, we're left with 3. So 18 is the same as 3 times 6, and 12 is the same as 2 times 6. So you can see we've split them up into their highest common factor, the highest common factor between the two numbers, and also the numbers that multiply those between there. So this same 2 times 6 over 3 times 6 is the same as 2/3 times 6 over 6. And we know that this 6 over 6, any number divided by itself, or any number that has the numerator and any fraction that has the numerator and denominator the same, is equal to 1. So that's equal to 2/3 multiplied by 1. And 2/3 times 1 is just 2/3. So the simplest form of 12/18 is 2/3. And we've divided both the top and the bottom by the highest common factor, divided the top and bottom by 6 to get 2/3. Look at a first example here. Rewrite the following fractions with a denominator of 40. So we've got 3/5, 1/2, 7/4, and 36 120ths. Looking for 3/5, what we need to do, the strategy we need to do, we need to change the denominator to 40. So we need to have a look at each of the denominators when we come to them and see what we need to either multiply or divide by to get it to 40. So for 5 on the bottom, we need to multiply it by 8. We need to do the same thing on the top and the bottom to make an equivalent fraction. So we multiply the bottom by 8 and the top by 8. Multiplying the bottom 5 times 8 is 40 and the top by 8, 3 times 8 is 24. So 24/40ths there. For this one, for 2, we need to multiply it by 20 to get 40. So multiply both the top and the bottom by 20 and we get 20 over 40. Here, to multiply, to get 40 on as the denominator here, we need to multiply by 10. So once again, multiply the top and the bottom by 10, times 10 times 10, we get 70/40ths. And lastly, this one's a little bit trickier. We don't need to multiply, we need to divide here. We need to divide 120 by 3 to get 40. So 120 divided by 3 is 40, so we need to do the same to the top and bottom. 36 divided by 3 is 12, and 120 divided by 3 is the 40. Last example for today, write the following in simplest form. So 8/20ths and 25/15ths. So for 8/20ths, the highest common factor between 8 and 20 is 4. We can divide both the top and bottom by 4. We can't go any higher than that though. We can also divide them both by 2, but the highest common factor, the biggest number we can divide them both by is 4. So 2 times 4, or 8 is equal to 2 times 4, and 20 is equal to 5 times 4. We can cancel the 4's because 4 divided by 4, 4 as the numerator and denominator, is just 1. That's why we can cancel them. It's not for any other reason other than they are equal to 1. So we're left with 2/5. So we've divided the top and the bottom by 4. For 25/15ths, the highest common factor is 5 for both of these numbers. So 25 is 5 times 5, and 15 is 3 times 5. Once again, we can cancel the 5's, but that's only because 5 divided by 5 is equal to 1. Okay, so that 5 over 5, that's 1. So it's 5/3 times 1. And the answer there is 5/3, because we've divided the top by 5 to get 5, and divided by the bottom by 5 to get 3.